Today we're going to learn Shabbat Daf Kuf Zayin. Today's shiur, we have a lot of dedications. Today's shiur is dedicated by Robin Zeiger and Professor Jonathan Ben Ezra in honor of their daughter Bracha. We're very proud of her that she's giving a siyum on Masechet Ta'anit. It's also sponsored by Lillian Cohen in memory of her father Kurt Philip, David Ben Tzvi Zichrono Lebracha, on what would have been his 91st birthday. And we have a lot of Father's Day dedications today. It's Father's Day in America. So in honor of Father's Day by Carolyn Benger, in honor of her father, Bernard Benger, Dov Ben Tzvi. He was my first teacher and opened my eyes to Torah. I miss you every day, Daddy, and I'm thinking of you this Father's Day. And in honor of Paul Gompers, an exemplary dad in every way, love Sivan, Annika, and Zoe. And finally, in honor of Adam Cohen from his children, your dedication to learning Daf Yomi as well as living a true Torah lifestyle is truly inspiring. We love you so much. Love, Max, Hannah, Sam, and Celia. Okay, with that, we will get started with our daf. We are starting at Kuf Vav Amud Bet at the bottom. Yashav ha'echad ala petach. We're continuing with capturing animals, hunting or capturing. So you have now a case where somebody was sitting ala petach, velo miluhu, but he's sitting by the entrance of his house, let's say, or whatever structure it was, and the animal is inside, but he's not fully covering the entrance. Yashav hasheni umiluhu, hasheni chayav. So the second person comes and fills in the entranceway. The second person is actually obligated. This is an interesting case. This is going to come up in Sanhedrin, for example. Let's say 10 people kill someone. So the first one hits them, and then the next person hits, and the next person hits. And the final blow, who's responsible? So here what happens, the final act that happened was the second person came in and sat there, even though without the first person it wouldn't be tzeidah. But since he came and he actually sealed the door kind of thing, then we're going to say he's responsible. Yashav harishon ala petach u'mil'uhu. But what if the first person actually filled in the whole entranceway by blocking it? Uba hasheni v'yashav lo b'tzido. Second guy comes and sits next to him. Af al pi she'amad harishon v'halach lo, harishon chayav hasheni patur. If the first person gets up now and the second person is still sitting there, and now the second person is blocking the door, so you would think maybe the second person is responsible because at this point, the second person is capturing the animal. Because if he were to move, the animal wouldn't be captured anymore. But we say Hasheni Patur, we actually learned this before. The second person is exempt because Halamaza Domet, what is this like? Imagine you get home and you come in your house, you open the door, you lock it, and then all of a sudden you find out there's a cat in your house. Okay, this happened to me once. I found a cat wandered into my house. The door had been left open. And am I obligated because I captured the cat, right? So the example they bring was a deer, but are we obligated because we captured the deer because I locked the door and then I caught the deer inside? Of course not. I had no intent. I was just locking my door, and I wasn't trying to capture. So therefore, the second person who sat there who wasn't trying to capture the deer inside is clearly not responsible when the first person moves, and he ends up being the one who's capturing. Chimera starts off on the top of Kuf Zayin. Amar Rabbi Abba Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi Amar Rav. Nechnesa lo tzipor tachat knafav yoshev u'mishamro ad shetachshach. If you're sitting on Shabbat and a bird wanders under your cloak, let's say somehow, gets under your clothing and it's there, are you allowed to basically keep it there until Shabbat comes out? Can you make sure it doesn't actually get out? And then when Shabbat's over, you kind of, say, oh, great, now I have this bird captured. So according to Rav, you're allowed to do this. You can sit there till nightfall and leave it where it is. But wait, he says that doesn't make any sense because Yashav lo harishon ala petach u'miluhu, uba hasheni v'yashav b'tzido, af al pi shamad harishon, now, when it said patur, what do we mean when we say patur? Patur means exempt. What does exempt mean always in the Mishnah? Well, maybe we'll learn today, not always. But exempt normally means you're exempt by Torah law, but it's forbidden by rabbinic law. So how can we allow you, right? There's always this range. There's chayav, there's mutar, it's allowed, and then there's patur, which is in the middle. Patur means you're exempt, so you won't have to bring a sin offering. However, according to the rabbis, this is forbidden to do. So if this is a case just like all the others, patur means patur val asul, then it's true the second person isn't obligated by Torah law, won't have to bring a sin offering, but that person is still not allowed to do what they did, right? You can't sit there in the petach and keep it covered. So Therefore, how can you keep this bird underneath your clothing until Shabbat ends and then take the bird after Shabbat? So my lav patur aval asul. So the Gemara says, oh no, lo patur mutar. This is one of the exceptions to the rule. This Mishnah means you're actually allowed to do this. The second person is doing nothing wrong. He can stay in the doorway. He hasn't done anything wrong by having to, because he just happened to be in the doorway when the first person got up and left. So therefore, likewise, if the bird just ran under your clothing and you hold it there and you just make sure it doesn't get out, there's actually nothing wrong with that. Just like that second person, he doesn't have to get up from the doorway and let the deer run out. Hachinami mistabra, and we can further prove that this is what the Mishnah means, because what does it say in the end? The case that they brought to compare it, what is this like? That's obviously a case I can come in my house and lock the door if I don't know there's an animal inside. Haven't done anything wrong whatsoever. So from there, michlaf, from there you can infer to patur umutar. But here it means exempt and actually permitted. Shma mina. Okay, that's a conclusion. Now we're going to have a second version of this whole sugya. So pretend we didn't see that. And now we're going to learn this in a totally different way. I shouldn't say totally different way, but instead of starting out with a question on what Rav says, we're going to start, what did we do? We questioned him from our Mishnah. We said, doesn't our Mishnah say patur? Isn't that patur aval asur? And isn't that a question? This time, they're going to first read our Mishnah that patur means mutal. And they're going to bring our Mishnah as a proof for what Rav says. So, Ika da Amre, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, the Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, instead of bringing our Mishnah as a difficulty, brought our Mishnah as a proof. Af ananami tanina. We can prove this from our Mishnah. Af al pi shamad harishon va'alach lo harishon, even though the person got up and left, va'alach lo harishon chayav hasheni patur. Right? Even if when the first person gets up, still the first person was responsible because he's the one who blocked the door. And the second one, who's now in the doorway blocking it, is patur. My love, is that not patur umutal? Doesn't our Mishnah mean it's allowed? So then the Gemara rejects this as a proof and said, no, you can't bring that as a proof. You could say, lo, patur aval asur. No, maybe you can mean, maybe the Mishnah means patur means patur aval asur. Our classic patur means exempt by Torah, but prohibited by the rabbis. Then the Gemara rejects this question, answers the question, and says, no. The conclusion is the same. In the end, they say, no, but you can see from the last line that it must be, it's allowed entirely. Okay, it's permitted. So it's basically the same thing. It's just a matter, did they first assume that our Mishnah meant patur aval asur, or did they first assume our Mishnah meant patur mutar? In the end, the conclusion is exactly the same. You might say, why are we learning this? It's like Abai said the other day, right? What we're just going to be, we're just going to repeat what we learned, like singing a song. By the way, Zmorta, I forgot. I just remember now. Zmorta, that whole thing about the Zemer. I think Zamir is a type of bird. Some people say, are you just like chirping like a bird, where a bird just says it and doesn't really have any idea what the bird is saying? That was another interpretation of that line. I forgot to mention that. Okay, moving on. I lost my place. Okay. Amar Shmuel. We're now where there's a little aleph there. So Amar Shmuel. Kop, we're about 10 lines before the end of the parak. Kop tulei Shabbat patur aval asur. Now we get to a very famous line. Every time it says patur aval asur, every time it says patur in Shabbat, it means patur aval asur. Levar mehane tlat, except for 3 exceptions. There's 3 exceptions to that rule. Did patur umutar, where we're going to say patur actually means exempt. We talked about this a long time ago, and that this is a classic case where there was an assumption of the Amoraim that when the Tanaim use a certain phrase, they mean something in particular. The patur means patur aval asur, and that's assuming that the Tanaim all use the same lingo, that they all have the same concept. However, it's very likely that, remember, the Mishnah is a book that was compiled from different Mishnayot that existed, that people were reciting by heart, and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi kind of put them together and edited them. But they were taken from all different people, and it could be some people said patur, and they meant patur exempt entirely, and some people meant exempt patur aval asur, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's one general rule about every time it says patur. But the Amoraim like to create these general rules and say, oh no, look at it. It must be that means always the same thing. But it wasn't necessarily the way in the time of the Tanaim. And now they're going to go through a few exceptions where it actually says patur and it really means it's permitted entirely. So the first one obviously is ours. Chada ha, that's ours, okay? Our case. Umimai de patur mutar de katan. And how do we know that ours means patur and it's actually allowed? That's because the katane sefer, as we already proved in both versions that we just read, nobody says that when you come in your house, you have to do a search. Are there animals in my house? Am I allowed to lock the door? Nobody says that. Of course, you're allowed to lock the door without checking, is there an animal inside? Again, in those days, right, it happened to me once, I told you that I left the door open and a cat came in. In those days, imagine they had lots more than cats roaming about. It was definitely more likely that if you left your door open, some animal came into your house. And yet, nobody says you have to check your house before you lock your door. V'idach, what's the second case? Hamapis morsa b'Shabbat. You open a wound, like you have a pussy, kind of abscess or a pimple or something. If you want to pop it on Shabbat, depends what your purpose is. Im lasot lapeh, if you want to open it up so that it stays open for the long term, okay? Rashi explains here, it's interesting, you might not have thought this. He says you're chayav mishum boneh, you're building. You're actually building by opening it up. You're building something, and it's long term because you want to keep it open. Or imishum mitaken kli says maybe it's tikkun kli because you're fixing something. What mali litaken mana mali litaken maka mali litaken kli? What's the difference whether you're fixing a wound or you're fixing some utensil? That's all called fixing. That's tikkun kli, which again tikkun kli could be bone, it could be makebe patish. So anyway. If you're doing it to keep for the long term, then you're chayav. But if you're just trying to get out the pus that's inside on a one-off and you're not actually building anything for the long term, you're just solving your immediate problem of it being painful for you, then patur. Now, how do we know? Mimai de patur mutal. How do we know that this is allowed? Okay, we're going to basically say this is allowed entirely. Now, why is it allowed entirely? Because it's permitted, because when you do this, number one, there's an issue, it's called malachashe natzricha legufa. Normally, you're building something because you want to build it. Here, you're not building it, you're just building it to get out the stuff inside. That's different. That's not for the purpose of the malacha. But what happens here is still, if it's a malachashe natzricha legufa, Rabbi Shimon says, patur meaning patur of halasur. So how do we get to, it's permitted entirely. So they explain that because of tza'ah, you're in pain. So Rabbi Shimon, who generally says it's patur, but the rabbis forbade it. Well, in a case where it's painful for you and you want to get out the pus because it's creating this pressure in your body, then we allow it. Because then we're going to say, the rabbis aren't going to forbid something that generally really isn't usher by Torah law. It's only the rabbis forbid it. Well, they're not going to forbid it in a place where it's causing you pain. Okay, that's the assumption here. How do we know that it's actually allowed? Ditnan, as it says in the fun Mishnah that we're going to come across in a few weeks, you're allowed, we're going to get back to carrying, believe it or not. You're allowed to carry out a needle in order, if you need the needle, normally needles were used for sewing and for something forbidden, but you're allowed to carry it. It's not considered muktzah if you need it to take out a thorn that gets stuck, a splinter kind of thing. So here we're saying we allow you, clearly you're allowed to take out a splinter then. Okay, so it sounds like you're allowed to take out a splinter even though, right, theoretically, it's malachashe natzricha legufa. V'idach, what's the third case? Hatzad nachash b'Shabbat. You're allowed to capture a snake. Depends why. Im itasek bo shelo yishachenu patur. If you're doing it just so that it doesn't bite you, then it's patur. Im l'refuah chayav. If you're using it because you want the nachash for medicinal purposes, if you remember, we saw a case where they used something from the snake for medicinal purposes, then it's chayav. Why? Because then you're capturing it legufa. That's a malacha hatzricha legufa. You're capturing it because you want the snake. That's the reason why you capture. You capture the animals because you want the animal. But if you're capturing it just to prevent it from bothering you, that's malacha she'natzricha legufa, which normally we'd say patur valasur. But again here, because you're worried about it biting you, now you'd have to say that it's not a poisonous snake. If it were a poisonous snake that could kill you, of course it's pikuach nefesh, you wouldn't even need this heter, because anything is allowed for saving your life. It would have to be an achash that's not dangerous in terms of saving your life, but you just don't want it to bite you. That's going to be allowed. Umimai de patura mutal. How do we know that it's actually allowed? Ditnan, because it says, again, muktzah related issues. Kofin kara laner b'shvil shelo tochaz b'koreh. We saw this. You can put a bowl on top of the candle, even though it's going to cause the candle to be extinguished. if you don't want it to have a fire, to catch on fire to the beams in your roof, on your ceiling. Valtso ashal katan, if there's feces of a young child that's sitting there, you're allowed to cover it because that's disgusting. Valakav shalotishach, and on a scorpion so that it doesn't bite you. Some people say, how can you learn from a scorpion to a snake? A scorpion's more dangerous than a snake, but in any case, they learn from there. Since you're allowed to put something to cover up the scorpion, which is basically tzad, therefore, right, since it's not muktzah because you're allowed to do it, it's not muktzah because you're allowed to do it. So here you see that it's permitted. And now we're starting the parak Shmona Shchatzim. Okay, we need a little bit of background. And according to the Torah, I brought this on the sheet. I'll read you the psukim. The psukim are in Vayikra Parak Yud Aleph. These are the creepy crawling creatures. We always refer back to them. There's 8 shtratzim we're going to see that carry tumah. This means not when they're alive, but when they die, their carcass creates impurities. If you touch it, if it touches something, all sorts of impurities. Who are they? Well, there's a big debate. We're going to see 8 written in the Torah, but what the 8 are is a big subject of discussion. Hacholed, ha'achbar, v'hatzav leminehu. Notice that in the middle of after the first 3, it says leminehu, and the pasuk ends. This is going to cause the opinion of the rabbis, who's going to say there's a distinction between the first 3 and the last 5, although they're really only going to say 4 out of the last 5, and they're going to have a reason for an exception of one of them. We won't get into all the details. We'll get into this more when we get to Chulin. We have a long time. But anyway, the choled, the achbar, and the tzav, those are the first 3. Let me go through what they are. A choled, they say, is a weasel. An achbar could be a mouse. Some people say it's something else, right? We call achbar a mouse. Some people say otherwise. Tzav is, some people say it's not a turtle. It's a dap lizard. It's a type of lizard. Anaka is a gecko. Okay, now we're going to keep reading. Anaka v'akoach v'alita'ah v'achomet v'atinshamet. So an anaka is a gecko. A koach is a land crocodile, maybe, or maybe a chameleon. A lita'ah is a lizard. A chomet is a skink. Tinshamet is either a chameleon or a mole. Okay, so a chameleon seems to be in the list, although there's a debate about which one it is. I think even someone says that maybe the tzav also maybe is I think one of them is also possibly a chameleon. In any case, these are our Shmona Shtratzim. I just want to go back. I see someone asked a question about covering the feces of the child is not trapping. Of course it's not trapping. The issue there was, is it muktzah? Since the feces is not usable on Shabbat, so how can you carry something for the purpose? If you remember, ein kli nital ela letzorech. You can only carry a utensil for a purpose, okay? For something that can be used on Shabbat. The feces can't be used on Shabbat. So theoretically, you shouldn't be allowed to carry something if it can't be used on Shabbat. So that's the issue there. So therefore, we allow it, even though you can't use the feces on Shabbat for anything, since it's disgusting, we allow you to do it. Okay, so that had nothing to do with trapping. It was just, they brought that because the issue that we were discussing had to do with trapping. One of those issues was about trapping the scorpion. Okay, back to the Shmona Shtratzim. So Shmona Shtratzim amrim b'Torah. Hatzadan v'achover behem chayav. So if you capture them or you injure them, you're obligated. Okay, the reason you're obligated for capturing is because these were things that people captured for use, okay, as opposed to capturing because they're bothering you, right? And you don't want to get bitten or something like that. Then it's going to be melach she'ein tzricha legufa. And chover behem chayav. Now this is a whole issue we're going to start with. So chover, first of all, we talked the other day, I forgot to mention one third option as to why chover is chayav. Chover basically means to have blood come out. Some people think what this is talking about is even if no blood comes out, but there's blood, internal bleeding, like you can see blood on the surface of the skin or inside. So now there's the flesh of the sheretz, then there's the skin, and in between there's blood. Now the question is, what happens to that blood after, right, when it's in between? If it never comes out, right, will it get reabsorbed into the body? If it will get reabsorbed into the body, that's basically a chabura that's not really a chabura because the blood's going to come back and reabsorb. Normally we say a chabura is when you get injured and blood comes out. Let's say the blood gets into the surface and it's in between. If we view this, now this is all about the skin of shratzim is different than the skin of people or animals. It's much thinner, okay, and we're going to talk about there's different types. So there's a debate in Chulin about tuma of the shratzim. Okay, let's just go back and start with that, and then we'll get to our topic. In shratzim, there's a big debate, because normally we'd say an animal, just the nevela, meaning the flesh of the animal, if an animal dies on its own, it has tuma nevela. That, right, without being shefted. If it's nevela, what happens? So the flesh is a nevela, but the hide is separate. That's not part of the flesh. It doesn't carry impurity. However, there's a debate when it comes to the shratzim. Do we say, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is going to say, none of the shratzim, okay, just went unmuted, 1 second. Do we say that the shratzim are all like other animals? Their or is considered separate from their flesh, okay? In which case, none of them carry impurity just on the skin. Okay, so if you look at the sheet that I brought the Mishnah in Chulin Perek Tet Mishnah Bet. Elu she'orotehen kivsaran. The Mishnah lists which shratzim, okay, against Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who's going to be the last opinion, he's going to say, none of the shratzim do we treat the or like the basal. It's just like animals. The or is separate from the flesh, and therefore the or is not mitameh at all. It doesn't carry impurity. But the rabbis say, the reason why the pasuk splits them, okay, whereas the first 3 and then the next 5, is to teach you that there's 2 different types of shratzim. There's ones that the or is like the basar, because we don't know why. In the end, we're going to say it's a gzerat hakatuv. According to the rabbis, it's the way the pasuk read it, and he says, v'chachamim, ha'anaka v'akoach v'alita'a v'achom. There it lists all sorts of things that are not part of the Shmona Shratzim, and then he says, in addition, of the 8, 4 of them, okay, I'm not going to discuss why one's an exception, because what he really does is he splits the first verse where there's 3, the second verse where there's 5. However, he thinks one of those 5 is not the case, but those 4, all we're going to treat the or, because we'll assume, he thinks maybe, we're not sure, that the or is thinner. It's going to be a little bit part of our debate today. Then the or is basically, you could say almost tafel to the skin, to the flesh, and the skin is basically treated the same. Now, if the skin is treated the same, then it's going to affect how we view a chabura. If the skin is like the flesh, then if there's blood in between the flesh and the skin, and it's all viewed as one, then we're going to assume the blood is going to get reabsorbed into the body, and it's not going to be considered a chabura. Rabbi Yehuda says, I disagree with Chachamim about one. He thinks the lita'ah is like the chulda, meaning the lita'ah is not in the category of oroteh and kibsaran. So he thinks there's only 3, the anaka, the koach, and the chomet. Those 3 have their or kibsaran. And Rabbi Yehuda's reason is going to be because he says it all goes by the texture of the skin. If the skin is hard, then it's considered separate, and then it's not going to carry impurity. If it's soft, then it's considered part of the body, and then we're going to assume that any sort of, okay, then again, if it's considered part of the flesh, then it's going to be mitameh, right? It will carry impurity just like the flesh. And then again, the whole question is going to be, do we make the jump to our case? If you think that orotehen kivsaran, that it's like the flesh, then you're going to assume that any chabura that happens, and then again, the assumption is going to be that the blood doesn't actually come out. Some people think if the blood actually comes out, it's obviously a chabura. But there's a bit of a debate about that. But if the blood doesn't come out, then we're going to assume it will just get reabsorbed because the or and the basar are all like one, and therefore the blood will just go right back in, which means it's not a chabura and you're going to be exempt. Okay, so it seems like they would argue, if they argue, the whole question is, they argue about this about tuma, because it's all about, do we treat the or like the basar, then we'll argue about it regarding chabura also. So again, it's a little bit confusing, this whole thing, because it's concepts that are a little hard for us to visualize. So again, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, all of the Shmona Shratzim, yesh lahen orot, which means their or is considered separate. If their or is considered separate, again, then what would we make the jump for chabura? And the chabura is like a chabura on a person. If you cause internal bleeding to someone, the blood he has a huge black and blue mark, and if the blood is inside, that's considered a chabura, okay? Because the assumption is that it won't get back and reabsorbed into the body. And okay, so let's read inside. So Shmona Shratzim Amurim b'Torah. So again, Hatzadan v'chover behen chayav. If you capture them or you injure them, you'll be obligated. Ushar shkatzim u'masim. Any other creepy crawlers, hachover behen patur. If you injure them, you'll be patur, because all the others we're going to assume their or is just like their basal. Hatzadan letzorech chayav shelo letzorech patur. If you capture them, it depends why you're capturing them. If you capture them because you want to use the animal for something, then you're obligated. But if it's shalol l'tzorech, you just want to get rid of it, then you're exempt. Chayav ha'ov shebirshuto, hatzadam patur v'chovel b'hem chayav, totally different topic. If you have an animal that's in your possession, belongs to you, your animal, then it's already considered captured. So if you capture it, you're not going to be obligated. However, hachovel b'hem chayav, because any animal or bird, chabala is going to be a chabala, okay? Now, here comes the Gemara, and this goes back to what I said before. If you didn't follow everything, we're now going to see it inside. That was just the background. About the shmona shchatzim. Michlal de'ilahu, or one must assume it must have skin, meaning the skin is different from the body, from the flesh. Man Tana, who's the Tana who holds this? Amar Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. This must be Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's approach, because he's the only one who views all the shmona shvatzim, their or is separate from their flesh. So therefore, it must be his opinion. Ditna Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, here's a quote from the Mishnah I quoted, Omer shmona shvatzim yesh lahen orot. All the shmona shvatzim, we view their hide, their skin as different, distinct from their flesh. And therefore, a chabura would be a chabura. But Rabbi Bar Huni is going to create lots of problems. He says, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Afilu tema Rabbanan, even the rabbis would agree with our Mishnah, meaning you can read our Mishnah as the rabbis. Why? Remember that I said that the rabbis learn it from the pasuk about Tumah. So they're going to say, according to the rabbis, it doesn't have to do with Rabbi Yehuda. It's clear that he talks about different skin, the quality of the skin. But the rabbis don't think the lita'ah is like the chodah, and even though the lita'ah has a harder skin. So the rabbis, basically, the Gemara is going to assume, or Rav is going to assume, they learned it just because of the pasuk. Now, the pasuk was talking about impurity. So comes Rav and he says, the rabbis only disagree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, ela linyan tumah. Dichtiv, eila hatmeim lachem, because the third verse there says, eila hatmeim lachem b'chol hasheret. So eila hatmeim is unnecessary. You don't need to say these are the tmeim. Most people say it's the hea yediyah that we're learning. L'rabot she'orotehem kivsaran. Eila hatmeim lachem comes to include that these also orotehem kivsaran. Okay, and then it's referring only specifically to the second verse and not to the first verse. And that's where he makes his drasha. Aval inyan Shabbat afilu Rabbanan modu. But you could say that when it comes to Shabbat, even the rabbis agree. Okay, so we're now saying that the whole machloket they have in Chulin, between at least the rabbis and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, doesn't so much have to do with the nature of their skin and what's real and what's not. It's more an issue of this is for laws of impurity. When it comes to Shabbat, we're going to view them all as if the or is separate from the basal, and therefore chabura will be a chabura, and the rabbis agree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. This is going to cause us problems because we're now going to bring some sources that disagree with this assumption. So we're going to have two questions, but the first one's going to be kind of long. The Hatanya, doesn't it say in a Braita, Hatzad echad mishmona shchatzim hamurim b'Torah, hachover behem chayav divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Okay, if you take any of the shmona shchatzim and you injure them, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says you're chayav. Okay, so here we see the topic is Shabbat. Here comes Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rav tried to say they don't disagree about Shabbat, but look at this Braita. This Braita is talking about Shabbat. And what does it say here? It says here, Chachamim omrim, ein or ela l'masha manu chachamim. Okay, this is very strange wording. Before we even get to the question, we're going to have to see what this wording means. But it sounds like the rabbis are disagreeing. And if the rabbis are disagreeing and the topic is Shabbat, then Rav is wrong. Right? How can you say they don't disagree about Shabbat? They only disagree about purity and impurity laws. So first we have to understand, what does it mean? Ela l'masha manu chachamim. Now, manu chachamim is the ones they listed. Now, notice the ones they listed. They listed the ones that, if you look back at the Mishnah that I put on the sheet, the Mishnah Chulin says, Elu she'orotehen kivsaran. Their or is like their basar, meaning they don't have or. Their or is considered just part of the flesh. So now, in this line, it doesn't make any sense. It says, Ein or ela l'masha manu chachamim, meaning there's only or in the case that the chachamim listed. So the Gemara says, before we even get to the question, adraba, l'masha manu chachamim ein lahem or. Specifically the ones the rabbis counted, there isn't or. So that doesn't make any sense. So Amar Abai, so the first explanation, Abai says, hachi kamar. This is what it means to say. Ein or chaluk mi basar. In other words, either which way you have to add words, and we're going to see three different options of what words to add here. Ein or chaluk mi basar ela l'masha lo minu chachamim. A very confusing line because it's got a lot of double negatives there. What does it mean? Or is not distinct from the basal, except for the cases shelo minu chachamim, except for the ones the rabbis didn't count. Okay, meaning not the ones they listed, the ones they didn't list, then we're going to treat the or as basar. In any case, if you read it that way, you end up with the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri about Shabbat also, which goes against Rav. So Amarle Rava first takes issue with Abaye's explanation and says you can't read the Mishnah that way because ha lemasha manu chachamim kamar. It says specifically lemasha manu. You're adding the word ela lemasha lo minu. You're saying the Mishnah means the Braita means the opposite. You can't add the word shelo. So I don't like your reading. So therefore, Elam Rava says if you're going to have to add words, I'll add words, and the words I'll add will resolve our contradiction with Rav. Because again, Rav said that even the rabbis will agree when it comes to Shabbat that or is distinct from basal. Okay? With Tuma, they'll say there's 4 cases where it's not. But with Shabbat, they'll say it is. However, the Braita seems to bring up this distinction. Again, the Braita started out, it's just confusing, so I want to keep going back. The Braita started off with capturing the animals and injuring the animals. You're going to be chayav with these shmona shratzim, sorry, not animals, but creatures. Tiver Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, so he's talking about Shabbat, and come the rabbis and they disagree. So comes Rava and he explains, this is how you should read it. By the way, I wrote this out in the format of question, answer, but then I charted it to make it also easy to understand or to review. So, Ela Amarava, Hachi Kamar. This is how it should read. Ein or mitamei kebasar ela lemasha manu chachamim. What does he add here? A key word that changes everything. Tuma. He said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, the Braita was talking about Shabbat. Comes the second line, when they bring in the rabbis, they say, well, when it comes to Tuma, we disagree. Okay, and that resolves Rav, because then the disagreement's only about Tuma. So now let's read how he reads it. Ein or is not mitamei, like the basar, except for the cases that the rabbis wrote. Okay, now this makes sense, because again, only the cases the rabbis wrote, those 4 cases, the or is like basar. So that works. However, there's a big problem with Rav. Why? Well, think about the way the Braita reads. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, all these shmona shratzim, if you're chovel, you're chayav. Why are you chayav? Because he says the or is distinct from the basar. We treat it separately. But the chachamim say, now read it the way Rava says it, chachamim come and say, ein or mitameh, the only case the or is mitameh like basar is in the case of the 4 that we list. But that sounds like michlal. From here you can infer what? To Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, hanach nami de lo minu chachamim mitamim. If they say it only is like basar in these cases, it sounds like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri thinks they're like basar in all the cases, because they're saying only in these cases they're like the basar. Now, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri didn't think they're like basar in any case, so the wording doesn't match the opinions, because it sounds like the rabbis are saying, don't say it in every case, say it only in these cases. But only in these cases are the cases where or is like the basar, and the Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri didn't think or is like basar in any case. So that reading can't work. Bakatani, doesn't it say Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri omer shmona shchatzim yesh lahen or v'lo mitamim? So fine, you added tuma, that makes sense, but it doesn't work with the word ella. So the simple answer is going to be Amar Rava de Barmatna. Third way of reading this Braita, Taritz Hachi. Answer like this: the Chachamim, once you're changing the wording, let's just change it entirely. Le'inyan tuma ein or lemasha manu chachamim. Okay, instead of saying ein or mitamei kebasar, he still says it's tuma, which means we don't have a question against Rav, because Rav was talking about Shabbat. And even though the topic of this Braita was Shabbat, the middle of the Braita shifts into saying, well, when it comes to tuma, they disagree. And now we can actually say they disagree about lemasha manu chachamim, because we're going to say chachamim omrim le'inyan tuma ein or lemasha manu chachamim. They take out the word ella. Once you take out the word ella, they're going to say, and the rabbis say that when it comes to tuma, there's no or in a bunch of cases. Okay, and then it makes sense. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri thinks there's or in all the cases. And come the rabbis and say, well, there's a few cases where ein orotehen kibsaran, and that all works. So now we had one question on Rav for this Braita. We said, how could you distinguish Shabbat and Tuma? How can you say there's a distinction and they don't disagree about Shabbat when this Braita seems to disagree about Shabbat? Comes the Gemara and they explain it, and we have the final explanation, which is the second part of that Braita is talking only about Tuma, and they have it read in a way that makes sense. But they now bring a second question. But we have another Braita that seems to say that they do argue also about Shabbat. The Hatanya, doesn't it say in a Braita, okay, so if you capture one of them or you injure them, you're chayav. Bishratzim sheyesh lehen orot. We're talking about shratzim that have skin. Ve'ezo hi chabura she'ena chozeret. And what's a chabura that's not chozeret? What's considered a chabura that you're going to be obligated for? Nitzrar hadam afa pishalo yatzaf. All the blood collects in one place, even though it doesn't go out. That's going to be considered a chabura because we're going to assume it won't get reabsorbed. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri omer shmona shratzim yesh lehen orot. So what do you see here? Tanakama says only the shratzim that have or, and not the ones that their or is like the basal, versus Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who says all the shratzim yesh lehen or, and you'll be chayav. So here you see they argue for Shabbat, so it's clear. Well, not necessarily. Amar Rav Ashi, remember we said there were three opinions. There's the rabbis who learn it from Gzerat HaKatuv, just because it says Eila Hatmeim, and then we have Rabbi Yehuda who says it all depends on how thick or thin. So we're going to basically say the Tanakama here, Amar Rav Ashi, Man Tanakama Rabbi Yehuda, De'aza Batar Gishta. That Tanakama, there isn't the rabbis. The rabbis don't disagree. The rabbis say it's Gzerat HaKatuv only by Tuma, and they'll agree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri about Chabala. But the opinion that disagreed here that said only if their orot are like, right, if they have or, is going to be Rabbi Yehuda. T'tnam, Rabbi Yehuda omer halita'a kechulda, meaning he has three on his list that have softer skin. That skin is be considered like basal. Aval Rabbanan, depligi alei Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, l'inyan tuma, l'inyan Shabbat module. Okay, they would agree l'inyan Shabbat. So now the Gemara says, Ihachi, but then there's something about this Breita that doesn't make sense. If the Breita is Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and the rabbis versus Rabbi Yehuda, why did it just say Divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri there? It should have said, Hi, Divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Why does it say that? It should say Divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri umachlokto. It should be Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and those who disagree with him, right, agree in this case. Mibaile. That's what it should have said. Divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So they say Tanei. Well, just change it. Reread this Breita and say Divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri umachlokto. It really means Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and the rabbis versus Rabbi Yehuda, in which case we can say that Rav is right, that the rabbis don't disagree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri when it comes to Shabbat, only Tuma because of the drasha on Eila Hatmeim. But that it's not, what we're basically saying is the rabbis aren't disagreeing with realities. There are a different skin type for these creatures. No, the rabbis are disagreeing purely on what the Torah is telling us. Okay, not having any necessary logic that we can understand to it. It's just Gzerat HaKatuv. Okay, before we go on, I just want to point out one thing about Seidah. Okay, when we talk about capturing, talked about this the other day, and I forgot to mention one thing. I started to say it before and then got sidetracked and didn't get back to it. What is the malacha if you kill these animals? Okay, if you kill them, what's the malacha? So there's a debate about whether the malacha is mishum nitilat neshama. Oh, I'm sorry, not the chabura. If you make a chabura, forget about killing. Killing is nitilat neshama. But if you make a chabura, the assumption is if blood comes out, or it does, even if it doesn't come out, you're obligated because either it's like nitilat neshama, you're basically, blood is the nefesh. Remember, we've seen the pasuk before, Adamu ha-nefesh. So taking blood out is like taking the soul out of the animal. And then it's like nitilat neshama, which is like shochet, and it's like slaughtering. Some people say it's tzovea. Remember, we talked about that, it colors. So first of all, it sounds strange, what you're coloring because of the blood, but it actually changes the color of the hide if there's blood underneath. And they talk about the orot elim adamim, which we're going to see soon. The cover, one of the covers in the Mishkan was made of the hide of the rams. And it was ma'adamim, it was red. Why is it red? From the blood. The blood that got into the hide caused it to be reddish in tint. So therefore, you could say it's mishum tzovea. And there's a third, which I forgot to mention the other day, which is the Rambam. The Rambam says it's asur mishum dash. Remember, mifarek is a tolad of dash. That's taking out, if you separate, the dash is separating the wheat from the chaff. If you take anything out, if something is collected inside and you take it out, like squeezing the lemons we talked about, even though there's debate about squeezing lemons, but if you take something out that's inside, and that's like it, the blood is inside and it's coming out. So therefore, some people, the Rambam says it's mishum dash. Okay, that was just an aside. Now we're going to go back to our Gemara. He asks now a question. How do we know that the chabura that's significant here is one that the blood won't get absorbed back into the body? How do we know that that's it? Hayapoch kushi oro. Will a kushi who has darker skin, will his color of his skin change? V'namer chabal b'rotav. It's a very interesting line in light of what's going on nowadays with people with different colored skin. Anyway, they say, Hayapoch kushi oro, can his skin color ever change? V'namer chabal b'rotav. And what about a leopard? Will its spots ever change? So my chabar b'rotav. What are the chaburotav here? This word. If we're talking about its spots, it shouldn't say that. It should say namer gvanav mebayla. It should say the color, right? Its shades of its spots. So why does it say chaburotav? It's to teach you. Ela kakushi ma orok dekushi ena chozeret. Since the color of their skin will never change. Af chabua, they darshan chaburotav to teach you about a chabua. Likewise, a chabua is something that's ena chozeret, that can never change, can never go back. Ushar shkatzim. Now we're back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said other shratzim, if you remember, all the other shratzim, or shkatzim, biremasim, creepy crawlers, hachovel behem patur, b'hatzadan litzorach chayav shelo litzorach patur. It depends why you're capturing it, whether you'll be obligated or not. So now they say ha-horgan, but it seems like if you killed it, for sure you'd be chayav, because it doesn't start saying, right? It's debating the chabua issue and the tzad, but obviously if you kill it, you'll be chayav. Man Tana, who's the Tana who says this? I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Eliezer, Tanya. This isn't everyone's opinion. Why? There's an interesting thing here. Rabbi Eliezer Omer ha'oreg kina b'Shabbat k'oreg gamal b'Shabbat. It's a funny line. If you kill a lice bug, it's like killing a camel. Okay, they bring like the biggest animal they can think of. Okay, a camel. So it's like killing a huge animal. You might think it's not the same. Matkifla, but we're going to see that not everybody agrees. Okay, so therefore, the opinion that disagrees would say you wouldn't be chayav if you kill. Our Mishnah must be Rabbi Eliezer who thinks you're chayav if you kill. But Matkefla Rabbi Yosef, he says, what do you mean? Okay, this is some interesting approach they had. They thought that kinim don't lay eggs, okay, that lice don't lay eggs, but they grow from the ground, spontaneous generation. Okay, that they kind of are created from the ground and not from reproduction. So they say that's only if it doesn't reproduce. But when it comes to other shkatzim u'masim that are parei u'revei, the rabbis would agree that they're also you're obligated for. So therefore, then they wouldn't disagree with our mission necessarily. Where do they learn their opinion from? The same thing from these elim that we talked about, that they would kill the rams in order to get the hide for the Mishkan. So Rabbi Eliezer savar ke'elim. They're just like rams. Ma'elim sheyesh b'hem nitilat neshama. Av kol sheyesh bo nitilat neshama. They're all live beings. If you kill them, you kill them. Rabbanan savar ke'elim. No, they're like rams in the sense that ma'elim parim u'parachim. Av kol de parei u'revei. Since they reproduce, it's only things that reproduce. So Amar le'abaye b'kina im parei u'revei. So now they're going to argue. Are they really not parei u'revei? Now they're not going to prove it from what they know about reality. They're going to prove it from sources. Doesn't it say, didn't someone say, God sustains the world from the horns of the ram until the eggs of the kinim. It sounds like they have eggs. So they say, mina hu demikra beitzei kinim. It's just a type of kina that they call the beitzei kinim, but it's not really that they have eggs. Tanya, but isn't there a braita that says, tefuye u beitzei kinim? So again, they answer, mina hu demikre beitzei kinim. It's just a type that's not really telling us anything about them. What about v'hai parosh de pirei revei? But a parosh, sorry, I forgot what a parosh is. Parosh, right, a flea. Okay, what about a flea? De pirei revei. The Tanya, hatzah parosh b'Shabbat, Rabbi Eliezer mechayev, Rabbi Yeshua poter. This reproduces, and yet the rabbis say you're exempt. So, Amar Rav Ashi, Seda Hariga Karami. Oh, wait. Parosh, there it's talking about Seda. Seda of a parosh is not the same as killing. Killing, the rabbis are going to think you're chayav. But Seda, Akan lo pliga Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua Ela Damar Savar Davar She'en B'mino Nitzod Chayav Umar Savar Patur. Aval Inyan Hariga Afilu Rabbi Yehoshua Modeh. Rabbi Yeshua is going to agree that if you kill them, the whole machloket there is about Seda. Again, we go back to the same basic machloket by Seda. Is this something, we saw this in yesterday's daf, is this something that people generally capture or not? If it's not something people generally capture, then there's going to be a debate about whether you're obligated or not. Okay, last part for today. Hatzadan l'tzorech chayav, shelo l'tzorech patur. So man Tana, who's the Tana of this? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Rabbi Shimon Hida, Amar melacha she'ena tzricha legufa patur alei. This is melacha she'ena tzricha legufa. Why? Because you're capturing it not because you need it, but because you want to make sure it doesn't bother you. That's not the reason they would capture things in the Mishkan, because they needed it for the hide or whatever it might be, but not because they wanted to protect themselves from getting injured or from, attack. Okay, that's the first version. Now we're going to say that the statement of Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, who said, who's the Tana of this source? It's Rabbi Shimon, who says Malacha Shein Tzarich Leguf is patur. It was said about two possible other Mishnayot, which were going to be things we learned earlier in the Daf. Ikedematne la'aha, hamapis morsa b'Shabbat, im laso lapeh chayav, im lotzi mimena lecha patur. About the Mishnah that talks about mapis morsa. If you open, you pop a pimple or some abscess. If you're doing it to open it and you want to really make an opening, then you're chayav. But if it's just to take out the pus inside, then you're patur. So Tana, who's the Tana of this source? Amar Rabbi Yehuda. And now the statement was said about this. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Shimon, Amar Malacha She'eina Tzricha Legufa, patur alei. And the third is ikedematne la'aha, hatzad nachash b'Shabbat, im itasek bo shalei shachenu patur, im l'refuah chayav. If you capture a snake on Shabbat, depends why you're doing it. If you're doing it so he doesn't bite you, you're exempt. If you're doing it, this is the one we said, right? Both these are the cases where we said exempt means exempt entirely. If it's for refuah purposes, you're chayav. And Tana, who's the Tana who says this? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Shimon, Amar Rabbi Shimon. Sorry, I read that wrong. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Rav. It's Rabbi Shimon. Amar Malacha She'eina Tzricha Legufa, patur alei. So this statement that we have of Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav, it was a debate. Was it said about the mapis morsa? Was it said about the nachash? Or is it said specifically about our case, about capturing one of the Shmona Shratzim, shelo litzorech, not for any purpose, but just to have it stop bothering you. In any case, all those three are cases of Malacha She'eina Tzricha Legufa, and I'll just mention in a second. Again, these are cases where we say the Malacha She'eina Tzricha Legufa, and we already discussed that there are different interpretations about what exactly is a Malacha She'eina Tzricha Legufa. Was it not done for the purpose they did in the Mishkan? Was it done for a negative purpose, right? These are all also negative. It's to stop them from hurting you, or to stop it from hurting you if we're talking about the abscess. So again, there were different interpretations. What is Malacha She'eina Tzricha Legufa? And all of them have to kind of fit in with all of these options, because these were all options brought about explaining these are cases of Malacha She'eina Tzricha Legufa, which is classic of Chimera, where we have examples without telling you exactly what all the definitions are, and you have to learn it from the examples brought. Okay, we'll stop here for today. We'll pick up with Shmuel tomorrow.